Hey everyone, today I wanted to do a video answering a bunch of questions that I received from people through messages and comments. I thought it would be a great idea to make a video on the questions as opposed to do direct messages back or comments back, as other people may have similar problems and I might be able to help you or address those problems in the video. The first question comes from What Legends Are. This question relates to my reasons for changing from Maya to Blender. So when I started out a few months ago, about 8 months ago now, 9 months ago maybe, doing this whole indie journey and YouTube, I was actually very intent on using Maya Lite. So Maya Lite is a much cheaper version in terms of the license fees. It's very good for indie teams or very small teams. And I ended up using Blender instead. Before I get into that, my background, so I used a lot of 3ds Max when I was younger. Then I switched over to using Maya and 3ds Max because I found the Maya workflow to work better for myself. And the models, maybe it was just the way I was doing things in 3ds Max, but I had a lot less issues when it came to animated and rigged models from Maya into Unity versus in 3ds Max, I had a few more issues. So I used Maya for quite some time. I did end up teaching Maya as well. We taught 3ds Max for a little bit in the course. But over the 2 years, I taught a lot of Maya. And when I started all of this indie journey by myself, so this whole journey is self-funded, I was thinking about, one, how can I work efficiently? And also on top of that, what is the best way to approach a budget? So I was looking at Maya, and I was also looking at alternatives. Blender kept on popping up as the obvious choice, but I was looking at other things because I had in my mind at the time that I wanted to use something, quote unquote, more professional based on my backgrounds. But upon looking into Blender further, I found that a lot of the tools that I may have used, anything really fancy in Maya, I didn't necessarily need for any of my development. Also, on top of that, Maya has similar tools, but Blender has a bunch of things like sculpting built in, and it's nowhere near as good as ZBrush, but it is still great to use. So there are a lot of things in Blender that make it like an all-in-one package for me. And initially the workflow, it was difficult to get used to, but now I really like it. So for me, it's a mix of, it's really budget. It saves a lot of money. It saves me from having to worry about licenses and renewing licenses. So that's why I personally am using Blender instead of Maya. And if you're in the same boat, if you really like Maya and you can afford a Maya Lite license, then go for it. If you're an indie developer and maybe you're just in your first year or your first few months and you don't have a title coming out for a while and you don't have the funds to purchase Maya, then Blender is a great option. The next question comes from Mr. Geek, and Mr. Geek wants to know, how do you come up with new ideas for apps? So you mentioned something interesting. You have a problem to solve, and that is definitely one way people think about things. There is an amazing talk, a TEDx talk by Mark Rober. It's how to come up with good ideas, and he argues that creativity is actually a muscle that you can develop, but people are not developing it all the time. He argues that one of the greatest ways to come up with new ideas and to train your creative muscle is to be curious. Observe things, so you look around at life, you become curious about things and you ask questions. To him, asking questions is one of the best ways to come up with new ideas because you might ask a question that needs a solution and then you'll come up with that solution. And maybe no one else that you know of has come up with that solution and you may be one of those first innovative people to come up with that solution. So you have a thing here where a good app is one that solves a problem. The main thing here is you're looking for the problem. The way to find the problem is to ask questions and be curious. So one key thing is if you believe in this kind of idea about being curious and exploring and asking questions, is that you need to experience a lot of things. Explore a lot of apps and see if you can ask questions about the apps. Maybe go on forums and see what people are asking questions about, what improvements they want on apps. And the main thing you want to do is you want to ask yourself questions about the apps and then come across something where you go, oh, that's a great idea. Like, why doesn't this app do this? Oh, I'm going to make that. And this happens a lot in game development as well. People ask questions and then they develop it how would this work in VR? How would this feel in this game? What happens if I do this instead? What if I make a very minimal game? What if I take away more elements from that other game? And all these things generate new genres and new ideas in the industry. So I really believe in this whole idea of being curious, observing, and asking questions. Another great thing to leave you with is Everything is a Remix by Kirby Ferguson. I'm not going to delve into this because it's like an entire topic, but in the description there will be a link for Everything is a Remix, and I highly recommend you look into it. The next question is from Battle Noob Fail TV. They are struggling to make their own game and they need tips on how to avoid overthinking the concept. So I'm going to give you what is working for me. I struggled with overthinking for quite some time. I even ended up making a video on it. When I find myself overthinking a game concept, instead of letting myself sit there, worry about it, think about it, I grab a piece of paper and a pen and I break down that concept into the simplest thing I can. So rather than looking at a mountain of work and this crazy game with all the story and music and animations and environments and systems and combat systems and all this crazy stuff, I just take that concept I have and I figure out what is the smallest chunk of that game I could make into a prototype to show someone to see if they even like it. And then I write all that stuff down and I make that little prototype. I playtest it, I see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'm going to throw that concept away. If I like it, I'm actually going to show it to a few people that I can trust to give me some constructive feedback. And if they like it, then I'm going to work on it. So instead of overthinking this concept for days, weeks, or months, I just spend a day, maybe even a week, prototyping it, which is way more constructive than thinking about it. So the next time you find yourself overthinking, break this whole concept down into the smallest bits possible, prototype those things, playtest it if you like it. If you don't, throw it out, get to the next idea. We don't have enough time to really sit there and overthink things. Life's way too short to overthink things, so just dive in and break things down and prototype them and see if you like it. That's my personal advice. The next question is from Ian, and Ian wants to know how long does it take to learn these tools and remember how to use them. So this is an interesting question and definitely something that I would have thought of when I was starting out. In terms of learning how to get used to it and just getting used to the tools in general, it really depends on if you're starting out for the first time or if you have experiences with similar user interfaces and software packages. If you're new to all this stuff, it really depends on who you are as a person. For me, for some reason, my brain just works really well with all different types of software. I love picking up a piece of software and using it. If you were to ask me to make a piece of software, I would hate that because I just like using tools other people have made. So it really depends on who you are. If you're thinking about starting Unity or Unreal or Game Maker or whatever, you can get very familiar with it very quickly. You could be making your first game after, 2 weeks or a month. And first game, I mean something really small, like your character jumps around and he collects something. It doesn't have to take forever to get used to the tools. In terms of remembering how to use them, that's simply from repetition. You don't have to memorize anything. You'll just remember things naturally. One important thing is, with development and any creative work, it's not like school. It's not a memory test. It's about your creativity and expressing that efficiently through the tools. So don't worry about memorizing anything, just worry about enjoying the tool set and learning as much as you can. And that's the end of the questions. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. It's fun to answer all your questions, and if you have more, feel free to leave a comment and ask me a question. I'd love to make more of these videos. I hope some of the information has been useful and informative. The game in the background was Transistor. It's a really great indie game. I highly recommend you check it out. There is a lot to learn from this title. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video.